great assets for research and discovery is in low Earth orbit.
I think we're going to have a lot more opportunity to do the exploration research that we need to get us to the moon and to Mars and beyond.
There's a larger group of us that are dreaming that potentially could have a ride someday and be working in space.
It's a huge goal, a huge accomplishment for both the partners, NASA and the United States of America.
This is just the beginning.
I know the greatest events in space exploration have not happened yet, and that our destiny lies above us.
Unlike traditional NASA programs, where we gave very prescriptive requirements for commercial crew, NASA's had high-level requirements based on our 50 years of human spaceflight experience for Boeing and SpaceX to meet. Our partners took those high-level requirements and introduced new technologies, procedures, and the out-of-the-box thinking that we have come to expect for the American aerospace industry.
Now, SpaceX is one of the companies that NASA ultimately chose to achieve this goal, and we've been able to introduce innovative ideas in collaboration with NASA, and together we've designed Crew Dragon to be one of the safest human spaceflight systems ever flown. Dragon and Falcon 9 together have years of operational experience, or what we do as flight heritage. The Crew Dragon builds on our Cargo Dragon's 17 successful flights to and from orbit since 2010, including 16 trips to the International Space Station. Not only have we conducted thousands of hours of testing, we've also enhanced and added a number of safety features. As an example, Dragon now has enhanced and additional parachutes. We used to have 3, and we added a 4th one for redundancy. And one of the most important safety features on Crew Dragon is our launch escape system, which is a huge advancement in the safety of human spaceflight. In 2015, we demonstrated the system during our pad abort test. Now, the launch escape system is outfitted with 8 Super Draco engines that are directly integrated into the spacecraft. This enables Crew Dragon to maintain escape capability from the launch pad all the way to orbit, a feature that no other spacecraft in history has ever possessed.
Now, following the success of this mission, but before Demo-2, SpaceX will conduct it, which will prove Dragon's escape capabilities during ascent. This test will tell us not only how Dragon will perform, but what the astronauts will actually experience if there were an actual emergency. After these tests, the NASA and SpaceX team will review all the data and verify that all the systems aboard have operated as designed. This extremely important step allows NASA to verify that SpaceX is meeting our requirements and can be certified to carry our astronauts safely to and from the space station. The first 2 crew members who will fly aboard Crew Dragon will be NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley on board that Demo-2 flight test. Then, NASA astronauts Mike Hopkins and Victor Glover will fly aboard the next Crew Dragon mission with 2 international partner crew members who've not yet been announced.
Yeah, and these NASA astronauts will not only be the first to fly on Crew Dragon, but they're also continuing the mission of the International Space Station, which is our premier orbital laboratory. It provides an environment to really learn what it takes for humans to live in space for the long periods that we will need to do when we go beyond low Earth orbit. Let's take a quick look at the history of the space station and its role in furthering human space exploration.
The International Space Station, a football field-sized, million-pound laboratory flying around planet Earth at 17,500 miles per hour. It's home in low Earth orbit and the bridge to exploring the far reaches of a place to learn what it takes to live, to work, to thrive in space. Thanks to space agencies representing more than a dozen countries around the world, it went from the drawing board to liftoff when the first piece flew into space in 1998. That kicked off a decade of construction, hauling the station to orbit piece by piece on NASA's space shuttle and Russian rockets. And after the first crew arrived in November 2000, we started an unbroken streak of humans living and working in space. Building on the legacy of past outposts like Skylab and Mir, the International Space Station became the training ground for humanity's next great journeys. Learning how to live in space for extreme periods of time, building and perfecting the technologies necessary to travel to our neighbors in the solar system. It gave us a place right on our doorstep to prepare for the next giant leap into the unknown. And thanks to the station, a new era in outer space is unfolding. What was once the domain of only nations and governments is now populated by a growing space fleet from American industry. Private spacecraft to fly cargo and crew members, new habitats and technologies for future space missions, and an open door for companies, research institutions, and even students around the world to do research in space that have never had the opportunity before. All laying the foundation for a robust economy in space. There have been thousands of experiments, hundreds of spacewalks, endless hours of challenges and successes, all done by humans hailing from countries around the globe. The International Space Station is what we can achieve as a when we come together to do the things that are hard. And the work isn't slowing down, because we're ready for the next giant leap. Because we're ready to go farther. Because what we do and learn along the way is for the benefit of all of humankind.
We clearly have an amazing responsibility to continue this research on the International Space Station, and that's what drove the creation of the Commercial Crew Program.
And right now, we're about T-minus 22 minutes and 30 seconds away from seeing our first launch as part of Commercial Crew. So let's check in with Lauren and Dan to hear more about today's mission.
Thanks, you guys. So for Demo-1, Dragon's estimated round trip is roughly 6 days, and its journey is fairly similar to that of our cargo Dragon when it makes its trip back and forth.
All right, the crowd's getting into it. As we await that T-minus 0 in just about 22 minutes, the ground
That gradually raise its orbit to align with space station. As you can see in this animation right here on the screen. As Dragon approaches ISS, it'll hold a few times before making one final push towards the space station, putting Dragon into the same orbital plane as it prepares for its approach and docking maneuvers.
And then next Dragon will make its approach and actually dock with the space station. This is going to be a very different process from what we've seen with Dragon deliveries in the past, which use a process called berthing, which requires somebody to be on the station to reach out and grab Dragon with a robotic arm. With docking not necessary, it's going to fly in all on its own.
Dragon will spend 5 days docked to ISS before preparing to return home. Following successful completion of Dragon's test objectives and cargo loading operations, the ISS crew on board will close out the cabin, perform final system checks, and configure the vehicle for docking. Once the automated undocking sequence is complete, Dragon will execute 2 departure burns using its onboard turbo engines, pushing it away from the space station.
Then next on its trip home is deorbit, entry, and splashdown, and that's going to cover all operations following the final departure maneuver, including the trunk separation, closure of the nose cone, a deorbit burn, deployment of the drogue and main parachutes, and then finally splashdown, at which point teams from SpaceX will move in and recover Dragon from the water.
So that covers what to expect on this mission without crew, but it is important to remember that this entire operation is also a training opportunity when we do have astronauts on board. So let's go now to NASA's Jennifer Wolfen at Kennedy Space and what's going on behind the scenes to prepare for the tour.
Thanks, Lauren. Ripley may be the only passenger on board this time, but our NASA and SpaceX teams are treating this launch as if Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley are flying in Crew Dragon, because next time they will be.
On launch day with the commercial partners, as soon as the crew walks into this room, the suit room, I officially hand them over to the partners. So SpaceX or Boeing officially takes charge of the crew at that point.
As NASA's Vehicle Integration Test Office Chief, veteran shuttle astronaut Shane Kimbrough is a big part in insulating the crew before launch. As teams have been preparing for the uncrewed Demo-1 flight, the crew has been suiting up, rehearsing with support teams what they will do for Demo-2. One major task has been dusting off the quarantine playbook. We didn't have to quarantine the crew this time, But for Demo 2, there's a lot of work that will go into making sure the crew is protected from any threat to their physical health and leading up to launch. It takes meticulous planning to make sure everyone who comes in contact with the astronauts is medically cleared to do so.
Launch day operations, while the crew's in quarantine, I control the crew pretty much, so from L-14 to launch day. They're mine, so to speak. Just make sure we run the schedules, we keep them in a quarantine situation, other people aren't coming up to them. On launch day in particular, I'm just making sure they're up, making sure they're moving along according to their timeline, behind.
And
Last look at your family and one last time to talk to them and tell them you love them and you'll be back soon, those kind of things.
right now, the Demo 2 crew is closely monitoring the pre-launch milestones inside of SpaceX's Launch Control Center, including propellant loading that began just a short time ago. The crew is using this morning to train for what will happen on Demo 2. Everything from strapping into their seats to being prepared to abort in the unlikely event of an emergency. These kinds of rehearsals are not new to the test teams, but this morning's uncrewed launch is more than just a simulation. It's their first chance to practice the real thing. We've touched on all the preparation leading to this moment, and let's talk about where the crew is heading, the International Space Station. Joining me to discuss this is David Brady. He's a scientist with the International Space Station program. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome, Jennifer.
Our viewers have been submitting social media using the hashtag AskNASA. Let's check them out. Okay. @FlipFlopLife83 says, I can't imagine life without the science you guys accomplished up there. Do you think that this will help prolong space station missions?
Oh, absolutely, and it's so exciting to see the folks involved in this are out there. They're so interested in the science because after all, we're all here to celebrate the how, but we need to talk a little bit about the why. And the why is that Space Station exists as a world-class facility to do research in space. So we're hoping that our CCP capability is going to double the amount of research that we can do in terms of time. Now you might ask, how can you double the amount of research by adding one crew member? Well, as you know, the crew spends a lot of time maintaining the vehicle. They also have to be available for spacewalks. And for every visiting vehicle that comes and goes, they're an integral part of that. Once all that is covered, adding an additional crew member should provide the capacity to do nothing additional other than research. So we're very excited at the capacity to do that because we're looking forward to even more discoveries, enabling more exploration, discovering things that will help commercial companies, and also benefiting people on Earth.
It's so exciting.
Oh yeah, it's really cool.
Let's see what our next question is. @JCS Amadora asks, will any cargo be returning from ISS with Crew Dragon back to Earth?
And we're expecting to be able to fly up about 200 pounds of cargo. Things that will be useful for in the research area is that, for example, we do a lot of life science research. And that life science research is dependent on biological. So as you might imagine, if you're a researcher that does biological research, you're looking forward to getting your samples back as often as possible so you have flexibility in doing your research. So the new CCP capability, that's another thing that it will provide for us.
That's great. That's all the time we have, unfortunately. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with our viewers.
You're welcome.
Let's check back in with Stephanie and Shiva for an update.
Guys, we really love hearing the questions from the fans of today's launch. It's really awesome to hear those. Now, we would be remiss if we didn't tell you about the story's launch pad that Falcon 9 will lift off from today, which is Launch Complex 39A. It's also called Pad A here in Florida, and it's the site of many historic launches.
It's where NASA astronauts launched the moon, and as Daryl Nail is going to tell us, it's where SpaceX has completed a 21st century makeover to the launch pad, launching us into the next generation of human spaceflight.
In the 1960s, NASA needed a new, bigger, and better launch pad, one capable of sending astronauts on historic journeys to the moon and back. To get there, that new pad needed to be capable of launching the most powerful rocket of its time, the mighty Saturn V. And so, in 1962, NASA began building the answer, Launch Complex 39A. At the bottom, a flame trench, 1.5 football fields long. And above it, a launch tower connecting to a concept at the time mobilized launch platforms. With highly explosive rocket fuel nearby, an emergency escape system was added. NASA engineers designed a high-speed elevator and a 200-foot-long escape tube down to a blast-resistant bunker 40 feet underground. In November of 1967, NASA launched the first successful test flight of an unmanned Saturn V rocket from Pad 39A. Historic missions to the moon followed, and another 39B was added. Decades later, 39A and B were modified to support the space shuttle program.
Liftoff, the final liftoff of Atlantis.
In the 1980s, all the way to last launch in July of 2011. After that, pads went dark.
3 years, 39A got a new lease on life. You see, NASA no longer needed 2 launch pads, so they upgraded it. And in 2014, SpaceX signed a 20-year lease agreement to launch their own rockets from here, as well as astronauts. And they'll be lifting off from the exact same place that Shuttle and Apollo astronauts once did.
First, SpaceX needed to upgrade the pad. The massive rotating service structure used to load cargo into the space shuttle was removed. And the most recent addition, a new crew access arm, a modernized steel and aluminum structure so NASA astronauts can bridge the distance between the launch tower and the Dragon crew capsule. Just under 6 years after the last space shuttle launch, fire and smoke returned to 39A when SpaceX launched NASA's 10th cargo resupply mission to the International Space Station. And a year later, SpaceX showed off the pad's versatility, launching a triple booster Falcon Heavy rocket on a test flight.
And that helped propel the number of launches here over the century mark. And more are planned. NASA and SpaceX have a contract to send astronauts to the International Space Station a half dozen times. And they're going to do it from right here at Pad 39A.
And the entire SpaceX team is truly honored that we're going to be launching astronauts again from Pad 39A.
At a little over 11 minutes, let's go back to this team in SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne for an update.
Thank you, guys. So SpaceX is inside everybody's super excited. But in order to transport crew, we have to make some key upgrades to the vehicle. So in a second here, we'll get an image of the inside of Dragon. Alright, so some of the easiest to spot differences between Crew Dragon and Cargo Dragon. First, notice these white composite panels. Those are there to close out the crew's habitable cabin space from the spacecraft's primary structure, as well as the components behind those panels that the crew does not need to access. Another very noticeable interior change is that we've added carbon fiber seats, which are custom sized for each crew member. Crew Dragon can fit up to 7 astronauts, but our first crew flight will have 2 astronauts, followed by operational missions which will carry 4, each of them wearing a SpaceX designed spacesuit. And as you can also see in the video, there's also a touchscreen control panel. While Dragon is fully autonomous, we have added this for redundancy so that the crew can navigate the spacecraft manually in the event of an emergency.
And those NASA astronauts have been working with SpaceX from early on to provide input into Crew Dragon's design. Right now they're finishing their training on all of the features of the spacecraft and the spacesuit, using simulators and other exercises in advance of that first crewed mission. Just like the seats, the spacesuit is individually fitted for each astronaut, designed to completely protect them from the vacuum environment of space. While the spacecraft obviously is the primary means of protecting those astronauts, the suit can act as a critical backup in the case of an emergency. And one final interesting point of distinction for Crew Dragon is once again we have windows on the spacecraft, so the crew can look out into space during the flight, providing not only cool views, but also helping them to view the station and orient Dragon during manual piloting.
Now let's not forget about Falcon 9. The design of our rocket is just as critical to the Demo-1 mission as the spacecraft. We have been launching Falcon 9 since 2010 to carry Cargo Dragon, as well as customer satellites inside of our family. But the rocket was built from the very beginning with the ultimate goal of carrying people in mind. Its simple 2-stage configuration minimizes separation events, and with 9 first-stage marine engines, Falcon 9 can successfully complete its mission even in the event of an engine shutdown. Both F9 and Dragon are designed to be reusable, and SpaceX has reflown 6 Dragons and 19 first-stage boosters to date. And as mentioned, following today's launch, we will attempt to land the Falcon 9 back on our drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean so that it can be used on a future flight.
SpaceX also intends to reuse the Dragon. Its mission's already set to be the in-flight abort test taking place later this year ahead of Demo-2. Now though, since we're under 9 minutes, let's check back in with Tom on the status of today's launch.
Thanks, guys. We are at 8 minutes and 30 seconds until launch. The excitement here at SpaceX headquarters is palpable. Just a quick update on the status of the rocket and the Dragon. The stage 1 and stage 2 are almost fully fueled with both RP1 and oxidizer. The range is good to go. We are monitoring, the weather's all looking good to go for launch. No issues with upper level winds or ground level winds or any lightning. The weather's actually looking really good at the gate. As John Ensperker always says, the weather is the one thing that everyone talks about, but the one thing that we can't control. Thankfully, it's looking good for launch today. We're continuing to monitor, but we are going to go over to Kennedy Space Center and see how the space station team is doing with Gary Jordan. How's it going over there, Gary?
Hey Tom, welcome to Mission Control Houston. Here, the teams behind me are looking after the systems of the International Space Station. This is, of course, the ultimate destination of Dragon launching today. Over the next day, we'll be monitoring Dragon through its approach to the International Space Station, and that's when things will really start to pick up, when it's just a few kilometers away. 3 crew members on board the International Space Station right now: NASA's Anne McClain, David St. Jacques of the Canadian Space Agency, and Oleg Kononenko of Roscosmos. Really, over the past week, they've been reviewing a lot of procedures for the docking operations and the ingress operations. That's when they actually enter the vehicle. Today, they don't really have much going on, a bit of an off-duty day, because tomorrow, that's when they execute all of these procedures, just over a day from now, when Dragon docks to the International Space Station, scheduled at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. This is a great time, a blast from the past. The last time that a vehicle docked to this part of the station was the Space Shuttle back in 2011. Again, our job really picks up when Dragon is just a few kilometers away from now. Everything's looking good on the station. Station now 255 statute miles over Central Europe. At the time of launch, station is scheduled to be over Central Iraq. That's how fast this thing is traveling. Dragon's going to spend some time chasing it down. But this is an exciting time. We have new vehicles coming online to launch humans to the International Space Station. Of course, more humans means more science, which is one of the goals of the International Space Station, to do scientific research and learn how to explore further on. We're working with commercial providers as well, not just SpaceX. SpaceX also providing cargo to the space station, but we're also working with international partners. But from here in Mission Control Houston, we're going to sit back. We actually have a view of the pad here on the front screen of Mission Control. Tom, we'll take it back to you to take us through the final moments before launch.
Thanks, Gary. We are just moments away from our launch of the first crew demonstration mission to the International Space Station. The Falcon 9 engine chill is underway right now. That gets those turbo pumps cold enough to pump the liquid oxygen and RP1 fuel to the 9 Merlin 1D engines at the bottom of the rocket. Strong back retract will start at about T-minus 5 minutes. That's just 30 seconds from now. And the crew access arm is already in the launch position. Around T-minus 1 minutes, that's when you'll hear the call out Falcon 9 is in startup. That means that the Falcon 9 flight computers have gone into startup mode, and they are now autonomously controlling the rest of the countdown. At about T-minus 2 seconds, we will ignite the flight computer will ignite the engines. We will check the power on those engines for a liftoff at T-minus 0 when the hold down is released. Just a reminder that this is an instantaneous launch window tonight. If we have a hold for any reason, we will have to scrub for tonight, but we do have a backup window at March 5th at 1:38 a.m. Eastern Time. The Dragon team has given us the thumbs up for that the spacecraft is ready to go. The range is also green, and we're looking good. Like I said earlier, the weather is looking fantastic at the Cape for both launch and recovery. With just about 4 minutes and 30 seconds left before liftoff, let's listen into the final countdown on the launch nets.
And strawback retard to start. Complete. And as final setup started. And then igniter burgers. Stage 1 launch load has closed out. Strong back there, retract angle of 88.3 degrees. We'll go lead verification at stage 1.
منير اختفى.
Crown gas closeout is starting. Falcon 9 is in startup. Ground gas closeout is complete. Go for launch. Stage 2 is pressing for flight. T-minus 30 seconds. Stage 1, pressing for flight. T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 0. Ignition, liftoff.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Stage 1 throttle buzzer.
Telemetry normal.
For those of you just joining us, you are watching a ascends through the atmosphere carrying the SpaceX Dragon 2 capsule to orbit, which is the point of maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. As you can hear in the background, the excitement at SpaceX headquarters is unbelievable here.
Stage 1 throttle.
Is passing through max Q.
You heard that call out from Max Q on the nets. The Falcon 9 actually throttles down its 9 Merlin engines to reduce aerodynamic loads on the vehicle. It is now throttling those engines back up.
Coming up at T plus 2 minutes and 35 seconds is going to be three events in quick succession. The first one is going to be the main engine cutoff, or MECO. That's when the 9 Merlin 1D engines that you can see on your screen right now will cut off shortly before a stage separation at 2 minutes and 38 seconds. Shortly after that, the Merlin vacuum engine of the second stage of the Falcon 9 will ignite, and what we call second engine start, or SES. That will be at 2 minutes and 46 seconds. So stand by for main engine cutoff, stage separation, and second engine start, coming up in just about 20 seconds from now. As you can hear from the cheering here at SpaceX headquarters, we did have a successful main engine cutoff, the stage separation, and as you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, that second stage engine is currently started and accelerating Dragon towards orbit. On the left-hand side of your screen, that is a view from this first stage as it makes its way back down towards the Earth. Let's go down to Lauren and Dan for updates on that first stage recovery.
All right, so as you can just see, we lifted off. We had an awesome liftoff of stage 1, and stage 2 is burning beautifully. Stage 1 also has a secondary mission that it is performing right now, which is getting ready to execute 2 burns before landing on the drone ship. The first is the entry burn start, which is starting at T plus 7 minutes and 48 seconds approximately. That's where 3 of the M1D engines will ignite. And what that burn does is it slows down stage 1 as it re-enters the upper parts of the Earth's atmosphere. If we didn't do that, that aerodynamic re-entry heating, the aero heating would heat up stage 1 and it would potentially break it apart. So we got to slow it down. From there, stage 1 is going to coast its way back down using those grid fins to help steer it, and then it'll execute the landing burn. That's going to happen at T plus 9 minutes and 24 seconds. That's where we're going to reignite that center E9 engine to hopefully bring stage 1 down to a beautiful stop right on the drone ship.
That's right, and while all that's happening, the second stage, which you can see glowing bright here, continuing to power Dragon, it's going to continue burning until just about 9 minutes after launch, so 8 minutes and 59 seconds is where it's targeted to cut off. Down to a single engine, but that one providing a little over 200,000 pounds of thrust to carry Dragon through the upper parts of Earth's atmosphere. Not as much resistance to fight against once you're up this high. And it's going to get Dragon into that initial orbit, and it's still going to be a couple 100 kilometers beneath the station. And then it'll be turned over to thrusters on Dragon once it separates from that second stage to then begin the chase down of the orbiting laboratory. But 5 minutes, 11 seconds and counting past launch. All the calls so far indicating nominal performance. So we're continuing to see great stuff so far from both stages of Falcon 9.
Okay, we're hearing that MVAC is performing nominally. It's looking good on power. Temperatures are good. Stage 1 continues to come back nominally. And look over there on the left on your screen. You see that picture in that 0G indicator.
As long as we have the view, as soon as Dragon's separated and it's essentially then in its pre-flight mode, you're going to see that little planet Earth start to float up. So keep an eye out once we separate Dragon in just a couple of minutes from now. 6 minutes past launch.
Trajectory continues to be nominal on stage 2. Still have about 2.5 more minutes left of this burn, at which point MVAC will shut down. We're just under a minute away from that entry burn on stage 1 that I mentioned before.
Dragon up. It's going to make it to that initial orbit after it separates. The separation coming about a minute after that second stage cutoff.
Stage 2 propellant tank pressures are looking good. The burn continues to be healthy. Now coming up in about 10 seconds, that entry burn is going to start. Hopefully we'll have onboard video and you'll be able to watch. Let's listen in on the call-outs.
Stage 1, FTF to space. Stage 1, entry burn has started.
Look at that flame. Stage 3, M1D engines reigniting. Burn is going to continue on for about another 18 or so seconds.
So a little back-to-back action now as we see stage 1 coming back down towards Earth. Stage 2 still making its way up into outer space. The Dragon still nestled on top, getting ready.
Stage 1, entry burn shutdown.
There's the end of that stage 1 shutdown.
Okay, so stage 1.
Next
And in just under a
Steership,
minute.
barrel.
That's right. Coming up in about 10 seconds. Index throttling now for Seco.
Stage 1 is
And
trained
we have
on.
had a successful shutdown. And back. Right. Stage 1 landing burn is supposed to start. At the start of that burn, stage 1 would be traveling at 275 meters per second. That single engine burn is going to bring that from 275 to 0.
We did just hear that stage 1 landing burn has started.
Alright, let's see if we get it. From where it will make its way back to Earth. Or sorry, back to Cape Canaveral, sorry. So there's still a lot more to go here. We have Dragon separation coming up. Let's go back to Tom Ferdario to cover that next big milestone.
Wow, what a landing. Coming up very shortly in just about 20 seconds here, the Dragon spacecraft is going to be separating from the top of the Falcon 9 rocket. Separation should be occurring around 11 minutes and 5 seconds, just about now. Let's wait for call for Dragon. Separation confirmed. And there it is. You're looking at a view from the top of the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. And hard to make out in the shadow of the Earth, but that is the Dragon 2 spacecraft flying in space for the first time after a successful separation. This is a great day for everyone here at SpaceX and NASA. Let's go back over to Gary and Johnson and see how they're handling it over there. It's kind of crazy over here. How is it over there, Gary?
Thanks, Tom. We were definitely enjoying hearing some of the cheers from over you guys. You can actually kind of see behind us. We got quite organic now that Dragon is in orbit. We have just over a day until Dragon's scheduled to be docked to the International Space Station. There's a lot of milestones to get through. The crew have been, again, reviewing their procedures, getting ready for some of those moments, again, monitoring the approach and even performing some commands while the Dragon is close enough. But again, there's a lot of work to do. We have docking scheduled for 6 a.m. tomorrow. We'll continue to monitor Dragon during that time. In the meantime, we'll toss to Lauren and Dan to witness some of these final milestones of Dragon now that it is in orbit. Back to you.
Thank you, Gary. Now for a typical Sierra mission right about now, we'll be awaiting solar array deployment. But as a reminder, these Dragon have solar arrays that's already activated with the DC power switches inside the Dragon. It's doing awesome.
That's right, and as Tom just mentioned, the nose cone is going to be opening, and that's going to expose those guidance and navigation control sensors and the docking mechanism. And then pretty soon, Dragon's going to execute that series of burns to gradually raise its orbit up to align more closely with the International Space Station.
Quick mission overview recap. We had a successful launch of Stage 1 and Dragon, of course. We landed Stage 1 on the drone ship, had video the whole way down. You got to check that out. Dragon has separated, it's activated, and it's now on its mission. So on behalf of SpaceX and NASA, thank you for watching today's broadcast. Thank you for your interest in the mission. And a big thank you to the Eastern Range for helping make today's launch possible.
Crew Dragon's mission obviously far from over. It's going to spend the next day or so on its way to the space station. It's going to arrive and dock just before 6 a.m. Eastern tomorrow, and it's going to spend 5 days attached. To get there, it's going to begin that series of phasing burns to raise its orbit just beneath the space station, at which point we will begin that slow and steady approach to docking.
We will be broadcasting Dragon's arrival and docking live on SpaceX.com and NASA TV. Our coverage will begin at 3:30 a.m. Eastern Time, so be sure to follow SpaceX and NASA on social media for real-time updates. Thank you again for watching, and hopefully you'll join us for docking.
Nice, 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition, liftoff.
Merci les amis pour la vidéo et je souhaite que vous abonnez à ma nouvelle chaîne et que vous laissez un like. Merci.